Okay, so now that I got my feelings about that abomination off my chest, now I'm going to talk about some Thor. Um, I'm going to talk about the first series, the God of Thunder by Jason Aaron, and then I'm going to follow it up with a review on Original Sin. Um, Out of all the stuff with when Marvel Now was just Marvel Now, um, the whole all new, all different stuff can be another topic. But I've really been encaps- encapsulated by Jason Aaron's Thor run. Um, a lot of this is because that when they did Marvel Now, he's still the only original writer from a series that was left on that. Now, granted, this series has gone into other books, but at least he's still seeing this run through. So I've really enjoyed what he's done with it. Um, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to review the two hardcovers of the God of Thunder series, and then I'm going to follow this up. I'm going to go ahead and do it in this video afterwards. A review on Original Sin. So I really have enjoyed this run thus far, and I've loved what he's done with this female Thor that has come along since then. And I will gradually get to reviewing that later on. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and get the really excellent part of this run out of the way. So, God of Thunder comes in two hardcovers, or you can collect them in four trades, which is God Butcher, God Bomb, Accursed, and Last Days of Midgard. I've heard something about an omnibus coming out, which will probably collect this right here. This will probably just be an omnibus by itself, or they might go ahead and shoehorn in a little bit of the female Thor to kind of round that out. Um, the reason why I like this run so far, and particularly this the first dozen issues of it, is because it kind of takes Thor and it makes it the darkest that I've seen Thor ever written. Uh, the first, actually 11 issues, excuse me. The first 11 issues actually deal with Thor in three different time periods. We have the young, um, drunken, debaucherous, but still lusting for battle Thor. We have the present day Thor, who is with the Avengers, but he's kind of hanging by himself in this. And then we have the old Odin looking Thor from the future. Now, through three different time periods, we're following him dealing with this character who calls himself Gore the God Butcher. Um, he's actually kind of an immortal serial killer who has been going around and committing genocidal deicide, I guess, against not only the gods of Earth, but also against different pantheons across the universe. And he's really a scary individual, and a lot of what we haven't really seen before is a really brash Thor from his youth who is kind of shown terrified by this an enemy that he has never faced before, and it really uh, puts a damper on his psyche, especially in his youth. Um, so this character is kind of just a gray, grotesque gargoyle-looking thing with a cape that makes shadow hounds that go around and chase gods down, and then he just goes in there and hangs them up, and then cuts them and butchers them, and that's kind of his shtick. Um, the first part of the story deals with Thor through three different time periods, going after this guy and facing him. And the future Thor is kind of showing the consequences of uh, what this guy's rampage has done to the world. And that's kind of a point to with this older Thor too, because if you've seen Wolverine and the X-Men, it's kind of a pseudo Days of Future Past type feel on Thor for the duration of this God of Thunder series, and I like that spin. Um, there is kind of a point to where these three do come together when Gore is actually able to threaten the universe with somehow he's gotten someone to construct him this bomb that would just completely it would spare mortals, but it would be deadly to every other god in the universe. And all three of the Thors have to come together and go after him and stop him. And the interactions between them are really funny. There's kind of this one scene to where um, past Thor, present Thor are riding on a ship with the older Thor, going after this guy, and the old Thor's driving the boat, and he's like, "Okay, where's the ale at?" And the other two Thors are sitting there. It's like, "Oh, we drank it already." And the older Thor's like, "What?" And he grabs a sword up and says, "You two better start steering this boat, or I'm going to throw both of your arses overboard." Uh, and that was a really funny scene. Um, there's also some other characters that pop into this, some other concepts that are pretty cool. Um, and in kind of an interesting fashion, I haven't talked about Rick Remender's run on Uncanny Avengers, but there is something in this that kind of shows up in Uncanny Avengers. Like, these two stories share connections, so basically Remender and Jason Aaron were working at some point together. Um, but it's a nice bounce off between two different writers that we see play out in this series. Uh, and the first volume is really great stuff. It's probably out of the God of Thunder is going to be the best two story arcs that you're going to find. The second volume contains the Accursed and the Last Days of Midgard story. So when we get to the Accursed stuff, this was published at the same time that the Dark World movie came out. And we're given a much better look at Malekith the Accursed, who is the Dark Elf, than what we got with the deadpan Malekith in the movie. Um, this is probably my least favorite story arc, but it's still really well written. Um, so Malekith is broken out of a prison where he's been kept for a long time. Uh, and he's actually planning to make war on the other. He's planning on taking over the Dark Elf realm, and he's wanting to make war on the other 8 realms while he's doing it. So the present day Thor is approached by his father, and reaching out to some of the other realms, he forms kind of a 9 realms version of the Avengers with a light elf, a dark elf, uh, a troll, an ogre, and then there's a light elf. The light elf is funny in particular because he's kind of like Seraphim from the Forever People, and he's obsessed with westerns, and he carries a pair of 6-shooters on him, which is awesome. Um, there's kind of a love story that starts to crop up, but it's cut short between Thor and a female dark elf in the story. And there's kind of a play about a mole on the team. Now, the mole is the really interesting part of the story that I did not see coming, and its reveal was a really good one in this. The last story is dealing with Thor taking on the Roxxon Corporation. Uh, and there's a little bit of a catch to it. It's a little bit over the top because even though this is kind of a dark series, there is still a little bit of over the top that happens in this, and it kind of takes on a little bit of a RoboCop tone to it. No over the top violence, but just kind of the parody about big business is present in this one. And it's run by this. The company is run by this guy named Dario Agger, and he has a hidden power, and we come to find out that he's actually a mythical creature who comes to fight Thor, and he's basically just moving into where he moves into Broxton, Oklahoma, and makes it a personal attack on Thor when Thor starts tearing up a lot of his company because it's polluting Midgard. And there's kind of a future fallout with the old Thor that shows that if Roxxon took over, it basically fucked up the Earth and made it a barren place. And old Thor can't stand leaving it because he's sentimental, and he has to deal with the Galactus because Galactus comes along and he wants to eat what's left of the Earth. Um, but the uh, the rocks and stuff is definitely good, and there is a female shield agent. Um, we kind of meet with Jane Foster in this. We find out that she has cancer. We examine where Thor and Jane's relationship, why it is the way it is, and she has a really good character arc in this. And there's also kind of a new love interest cropping up with a female shield agent named Solomon. So her and Thor kind of have a thing going. But this is really good stuff. Overall, the God of Thunder stuff is really good. I do highly recommend it, especially as a terrific start to what is probably the best thing that I've been reading out of Marvel for the last few years right now. And I enjoy it. I highly recommend it to anybody. That being said, I was warned not to read this, which is a follow up and has connections to the Thor run. Um, but I kind of wanted to go ahead and read it anyway, and I'm kind of sorry that I did. Original Sin is a big event that was done back in 2014. Jason Aaron wrote it, Mike Diodato does the artwork, and it's basically a big murder mystery about who killed the Watcher and took his eyes because whoever uses his eyes can see all the shit that's going on, and this story cropped out a bunch of tie-ins that have uh, sins that crop up for every character. I didn't bother reading a lot of them except the Thor one. Um, really, what's important about this? But I'll talk about the nature of the story before I talk about the Thor connection. Um, this story really served two purposes. One, it was to cause some shit for a lot of other characters in their books, and the other thing is that now that we're trying to turn a lot of the comics and make them reflect what the MCU is doing, this story is basically written just to write the white Nick Fury out of continuity. Um, and which that might be kind of a spoiler for anybody that was looking into this, but Nick Fury is the one that kills the Watcher, and he takes his eye, and he basically becomes a bad guy. A lot of the characters that are set up in this while reading it um, are just randomly put together. The story kind of acts like that there is some purpose that there might be for teaming up random characters, like we'll get Emma Frost, the Punisher, and Doctor Strange on one squad. We'll have Captain America, Rogue, and let's say Man Thing, who is not in this story, but just as an example, on another squad, and they're going to figure out who killed the Watcher and what's going on with it. Um, this is a fan fiction written as a company event. Um, the artwork is good. Diodato's a really good artist, so he does what he does with this. Um, but if Jason Aaron chose to come on here and write a story, I must say that this is not really one of his best ones that I've read out of his Marvel work. Um, really, the only impact that this has on Thor is going to be Nick Fury whispers something to Thor, he drops the hammer and he can't pick it up anymore. And that's it. Um, I think in the longer run, as far as a connection to Thor, like, this is not like what Grant Morrison's Batman run is, and you tie into Final Crisis, because the Batman tie-ins actually do mean something. The connection here is just in passing, and it's meaningless for the duration of this event. Really, you could just go into the Thor books and read them, and there's kind of a point, well, he can't pick up the hammer no more, and there's this female Thor. And that's really just the best dismissal for this that I have. Um, the only other thing that I will mention to this is that Jason Aaron did write a Thor and Loki tie-in to this, which explains, which is kind of a way of bringing Angela into the Marvel Universe now, from Spawn. Um, that's also, I read it on my Kindle. That's a very weak miniseries. The only thing that we've established out of that, and I'll just spoil the hell out of it, we find out that Angela is Thor's sister. And we get the serpent from Matt Fraction's fear itself resurrected in that story. You can read it if you want to, but it has more of a connection to Jason Aaron's Thor run in the long run. But like this, it is superfluous. It it hardly serves any purpose. Like there could be some between shit that happened that will probably be covered in the recaps, um, and it doesn't mean anything on the run so far. Um, Bottom line of this is, if you want to start Jason Aaron's Thor run, this is a really good series to get into. I do highly recommend it. And unless you just want to go out of your way and read this, by all means do. Um, I, God bless you if you enjoy it more than I did, but I would say stay away from this one. Don't bother with it. And that's pretty much all I've got to say.